After purchasing our Bailey Endurance B62 about 3 months ago, I wanted to make a full review video with as much detail as is possible to fit into a 25-minute video. So I better crack on. Hi, it's Dave T here in our Bailey B62, which is the rear lounge variant of Bailey's Endeavour campervan. The Endeavour range was first available in 2024 and there are now 4 models available plus an additional model in the Endurance sister range. Based on the 2019 Ford Transit, the Endeavours are all just under 6 metres long, a smidgen under 2.5 metres wide with mirrors open, and the B62 and B63 are both 2.8 metres tall, with the other models taller due to the pop top. The 6 metre length makes the Endeavours a little bit easier to park with less overhang in a typical parking space. The inclusion of diesel fueled heating and some clever use of space means that we didn't actually miss the extra length of our old 6.4 metre van as much as we thought we might. All Endeavours currently use a dark blue base vehicle with tasteful and understated graphics. Did you know, by the way, that graphics and decals on campervans is actually one of the requirements for them to be classified as motorhomes in the UK? Anyway, we quite like the shape of the Ford Transit, and it certainly tends to stand out on campsites when roughly 3/4 of UK campervans and motorhomes are actually Ducato-based. The wheels have a clean and simple understated gloss black design with standard road tyres fitted, making an upgrade to more off-road capable tyres a common option for many people. The Transit is slightly taller than the Ducato and also has slightly less ground clearance, making for more headroom inside. This also makes the step into both the cab and the side door noticeably lower, a real benefit for shorter people or those with bad knees. There is just one key lock on the driver's door with full central locking operated with either of the 2 supplied key fobs. The diesel and AdBlue is accessed via a hatch that's locked by an overlap with the passenger door. Interestingly, there's no fuel cap, just a self-sealing flap that you push the filler nozzle through. The 2-litre 165 brake horsepower diesel engine is much quieter, we feel, than our previous 2020 Ducato power plant, and all Endeavours come with the 8-speed automatic as standard. The starter battery is under the driver's seat, but the jump start points are actually in the engine bay, which is accessed by unlocking using the ignition key. Also, under the driver's seat you will find a jack, tyre changing tools and the locking wheel nut. Moving on to the other external features of the B62, there is a 3.5 metre 2-lay wind-out awning as standard on the passenger side. The rear doors both open and can be swung further out by releasing this catch. Bailey have thoughtfully added some clips to hold the awning winder handle on the back of the upper locker. On the driver's side, there's the 240 volt mains hookup point, the flue for the Truma diesel heater, a lockable filler cap for fresh water, and then the toilet cassette hatch. Somewhat annoyingly, the water cap and toilet cassette actually use different keys. It's only a small thing, but it's also an easy thing to fix, so come on, Bailey. Talking of water, there are 2 underslung water tanks which extend lengthways along either side of the van chassis. The fresh water tank is on the driver's side and holds a respectable 100 litres, with the waste tank on the passenger side holding about 56 litres. Each has a drain tap at the rear. This is quite small in diameter, so I'd recommend regularly flushing the waste tank with suitable cleaner to avoid any blockages. Also, mark the taps, otherwise it's really not obvious if they are open or closed. The underslung tanks saves a lot of internal space but present 2 possible issues. The first is that the level gauges tend to be less accurate simply because the depth is actually kind of like the shortest dimension of the tanks. They are also more prone to freezing if you're venturing into very cold climates, but you can of course purchase aftermarket heaters. On the roof there is a 100-watt solar panel, status TV aerial and 2 main roof skylights. All of the vans in the Endeavour Endurance ranges have a maximum weight of 3,500 kilos, so legal for any full UK licence holder. The stated mass in running order of the B62 is 2,873 kilos, making it the lightest of the Endeavour range at 46 kilos less than the B63. This gives a significant potential payload of 627 kilos, though bear in mind driver and passenger weight comes out of that figure. And if you're planning on loading anywhere near the maximum of 3,500 kilos, I'd strongly recommend for any van a trip to the weighbridge to confirm your actual loaded weight. Along with the B63, the B62 has just 2 designated travelling seats, which saves a lot of space in the main living area. In addition to the usual slide and recline, each seat has adjustable armrests, seat-based elevation and tilt, and lumbar adjustment. Both seats rotate, but the driver's seat can only realistically be partly turned due to the wall that's directly behind it. This is one of the limitations of the B62 for taller drivers such as myself, with the cupboard wall restricting the amount the seat can be slid back and or reclined. With the seat as vertical as I'm comfortable with, I actually lose about 15 to 20 millimeters of rearward travel on the seat. Now I'm 6'4" and find the position a little bit cramped, but I know of other B62 owners that are 6'5" and do get by. More normal sized humans will likely not have an issue, and we've elected to offset the limitation by my wife taking more of a share of the driving. Which brings us on to one of the Transit's greatest features, which is the driving experience. You've no doubt heard this before, but driving a Transit is so much more like driving a car. Everything from the steering to the switchgear and the visibility is just so much more refined than our previous Ducato. Driving visibility in campervans and motorhomes is often slightly compromised by the fitting of blinds. This is also true in the Transit, but I found the Transit much better than with our previous Ducato, mainly because it was starting from a better initial level of visibility of the mirrors. Control features of note are the electric handbrake, which avoids the need for a physical lever that can be awkward to reach or can snag you when you're getting in and out of the van. The gear mode selector is a simple dial, and for manual gear selection there are flappy paddles on the steering wheel. Pull on either paddle to turn on the manual gear selection, then pull on the left panel to change down a gear or right paddle to change up. It won't let you actually change gear if that would be too high or too low for the speed you're at. Pulling the right paddle for a few seconds will then switch you back to full auto. The massive central infotainment screen gives access to a lot of the vehicle settings such as fuel economy settings, disabling auto start stop and more. It is also where you control the heating, which to be honest I find a little bit of a faff when you want to just turn the heating up or down a touch. Where it really excels however is with the rear camera, where it gives a fantastic view for reversing. And of course for satellite navigation, which will operate from your phone, it's fantastic because you've got a massive, great big map in front of you. Our 2025 model has the full electronic instrument cluster. I really like this as it can show so much more information in a much clearer format. This works really well with the other driver assistance features, which include lane control that kind of nudges the steering wheel to correct direction if you drift out of lane, speed sign recognition, cruise control, which is not adaptive, standard speed limiter where you manually input the speed limit, and also an intelligent speed limiter which sets the limiter to be the detected or sign read speed limit. The cab space is quite practical with a glove box, some pockets, several cup holders and bottle holders, as well as an overhead shelf, which I'm not a massive fan of as it makes tall people like me getting out of the seats a little bit more awkward, but it's another place to put stuff. For power and connectivity, there's 2 USB points, one of which is USB-C, and then there's 2 12-volt sockets. Overall, we found the Transit platform just easier and more relaxing to drive. In addition to the cab windows, there is an overhead front-facing skylight which brings in a lot of natural light, especially if using a windscreen cover. There's also a medium-sized and a frankly tiny opening roof light to the rear of the van. The passenger side has 2 double-glazed large windows, with the rearmost window being fixed to avoid it clashing with the sliding door. Both rear doors have opening windows, and there is another large window on the rear driver's side. There's no window though in the toilet. All windows have blinds, with the opening habitation windows also having fly screens. There's no fly screen for the sliding door. Personally, I don't really miss this too much since large door fly screens are always prone to damage and breaking. I will be trying out some magnetically attached fly screens at some point in the future though. Entering the living area via the side door, there's a 2-lay electric step. As mentioned, the van floor is generally lower than our previous Ducato, but Bailey have also added a grab handle. The first thing that strikes you when entering the B62 is the openness, with long lines of sight and ample floor space to move through the vehicle. This is in part due to the novel way in which the bathroom door works. Bailey has come up with a clever revolving track, which is really effective, but for a reviewer also an absolute pain to try and film. The timbre door basically encloses the full width of the bathroom and runs on an oval track. This means that it has effectively 3 positions. When the bathroom is not occupied, the door sits on the concave side of the track, adding additional 30 or so centimetres to the gangway space past the kitchen unit. When the bathroom is occupied, the door slits on the convex side of the track, reducing the gangway still to a respectable size, but adding that 10 inches or so of space to the bathroom. The third position is when the door is halfway round the track, at which point it is possible to enter or exit the bathroom through an entrance which is still a respectable 425mm wide. This means that the bathroom is larger than in most similar sized vans, but the living space is also larger. This idea is even more ingenious when you consider that in a 2-berth van, you don't really need the gangway passing space when the other person is in the bathroom. With the door in its convex position, there is a surprising amount of space in the bathroom. There's a Thetford C220-based cassette toilet, which some people have described as being a little bit tall. It has an 18-litre waste holding capacity, and the electric flush takes water from the main fresh water tank. So no need for pink fluid, but you may want to get a bottle of Thetford pink spray to keep it smelling fresh. The sink is compact but usable, with the tap on an extendable hose for use as a showerhead. The tap itself has a toggle switch which changes it from constant flow to trigger operation to save water when showering. To convert the bathroom into the shower mode, the floor section within the door track should be lifted out and then the shower curtain drawn across to protect the vanity unit. Storage wise, there's a cupboard under the sink and a high level cupboard, as well as some narrow but walled shelves. There's also a hook on the wall if you need to hang up wet coats. The kitchen area consists of 1 floor unit with an overhead cupboard. To the right of the worktop, there's a round 36cm sink that's 12cm deep. Next to that, there's a 3-burner Thetford XXX gas hob with integrated combined oven and grill below. Someone has actually cooked a full Christmas dinner in this oven, and it is functional, providing you increase the cooking times. The hob and oven are the only items powered by the single 6-kilo gas cylinder, which is stored in a sealed gas locker below the sink that's accessible when the sliding door is open. There's a shelf under the sink. Below that, a reasonably sized kitchen drawer. We use shallow foam to store cutting knives and larger utensils in the cutlery drawer, while storing our specific cutlery set in these vertical holders that I designed and 3D printed, then attached to the inside of the door. Further down, there's another cupboard that's a reasonable size but probably needs a shelf added to be more efficient. To the left and below the oven, there is a fairly large cupboard that we've actually subdivided with these movable partitions held in place with magnets. The cupboard above the kitchen unit is divided vertically, with a deeper cupboard on the right and shallower cupboard on the left, which itself is divided by a shelf. All in all, there's a fair amount of storage space, and especially if the side extension is lifted, the worktop is more than adequate. Opposite the kitchen unit, but still within easy reach, is the Thetford T2090C compressor fridge. This runs purely from 12 volt, which is pretty common in camper vans. There's no gas or mains electric power option specifically for the fridge. It's reasonably quiet, though it can get a little bit gurgly while settling down after a bouncy trip. There is also a night mode to reduce noise and power consumption, and it has an 84-litre capacity, so plenty of space for a 2-person van, and with reasonable internal subdividers to keep things organised and quiet whilst driving. Incidentally, the fridge operates without the main 12 volt system being turned on. So to avoid draining the battery, there's an isolation switch under the passenger seat that I'm sitting in right now. The rear lounge is most likely the feature that attracts anyone interested in buying a B62. In its daytime configuration, this gives long bench seats on either side, which wrap around at the end to give an additional centre seat, and backrests if you want to sit in the corner. A table is also provided that uses a single leg mounted into a floor plate, which provides just enough space for 2 people to dine at. The lounge can be configured in 2 ways for sleeping. The simplest is to simply remove the backrests and corner cushions to create 2 single beds. The excess cushions can be stowed on the front cab seats in the centre gangway between the beds, or some people have taken to hanging them from the winder handle across the rear windows overnight. Alternatively, the next option is to use the Z-hinged baseboard, which can be inserted into the gangway space, and then the backrests are used to fill the gap. This involves some de-velcroing of cushion pieces along with some jigsaw-like assembly of the remaining parts. The result is almost enough bedding real estate for nighttime activities that end with someone shouting game, set and match. As an ex-caravanner, we're pretty experienced at converting bench seats into beds, but yeah, this is one of the more complex procedures. From a comfort perspective, dual-purpose seat mattresses are never perfect, but these are reasonable, and with the addition of a mattress topper such as from Duvalet, they are actually pretty comfortable. Personally, we have actually removed the corner cushions and centre seat along with the baseboard used to put up the double bed. Our plan is purely to use the single beds, and the centre gangway will then be used for additional storage. So subscribe and click the bell icon for a video of how that turned out. Talking of storage, the downside of having a rear lounge layout, apart from having to make up beds, is that there is no possibility for a garage type storage underneath the bed. The B62 does, however, still manage to provide a reasonable amount of storage. For equipment and larger items, there is space under each of those side benches, with access either by lifting the seats or using the doors at the rear end of each. On the passenger side, this space extends the full length of the bench to store longer items like our Brunner folding table. There are some width and height restrictions, so don't expect to store items that are very big in more than one direction, but there is a fair amount of volume. The front end under the driver's side bench is taken up by the Truma boiler and water pump, with the tabletop stored on top. The rear part is, however, accessible via a fold-down hatch, as well as by lifting the seat or from the access through the rear door. Interestingly, Swift's Trecker XL, which is probably the B62's main UK competitor, has a similar bench arrangement, but a combination of a very complex bed frame and drawers drastically reduce the passenger side space underneath the bed, whilst services actually take up almost the entire driver's side space under the bench. So comparatively, the B62 has far more underbed storage. Up at roof level, there are two large lockers on either side and a useful end locker to make use of every last bit of space. Upper lockers on the driver's side lose a little bit of usable space in the rear locker due to the status TV aerial post and booster. The front locker also has a small housing for the TV point gubbins. Another example of Bailey's attention to detail, however, is how the end and side lockers interact, allowing both lockers to be open at the same time. Further forward, behind the driver's seat and above the fridge, there's a small wardrobe tall enough to hang a shirt or folded trousers, and with a mirror on the inside of the door. From a system and services perspective, Bailey's Endeavour range is generally well spec'd, with one notable exception, which, to be fair, is a common issue across the industry. The heart of any camper van or motorhome is the power system, since without it, the entire van becomes pretty much uninhabitable. The Endeavour range uses no less than 5 sources, which actually gives it several advantages over many competitors. For cooking, as previously mentioned, there is a gas locker which can hold a single cylinder, typically 6 kilos. This is only used for cooking with the hob or the oven, so would likely last a whole season or more for most people. It's connected using a Truma mono-control crash-safe gas regulator, which actually disconnects the gas if a crash force is detected. I'd recommend still turning off the gas at the cylinder whilst travelling, and also check the instructions on how to reset the crash sensor if it accidentally triggers when going over a pothole or something. There's no gas barbecue point as standard, but it's easy enough to just connect direct to the bottle, or even take the bottle out of the gas locker if you want to cook further away from the van. For electrical power, there is a 240 volt hookup to provide mains power. This runs a 12 volt power supply in the consumer unit box, which in turn keeps both the habitation battery and starter battery charged whilst on hookup. It also provides power to the Truma boiler, but more on that in a minute. Pretty much all of the services within the Endeavour and most campervans and motorhomes are powered by the 12 volt habitation battery. In the B62, this is a 105 amp hour lead acid battery located under the passenger seat. Also under the passenger seat is the fridge isolation switch I mentioned earlier, solar controller and B2B charger. The habitation battery is kept charged by either the 12 volt power supply when you're on a mains hookup, the B2B powered by the vehicle's alternator when driving, and of course the rooftop 100 watt solar panel via the solar controller when the sun is shining. This is all fairly standard and has been the same across the industry for decades, which comes on to my main complaint, not just to be fair about Bailey, but the industry as a whole. For off-grid use, when you haven't got a mains hookup, the supplied 105 amp hour battery is limiting and there's no real space to easily add a second battery. The 100-watt solar panel is adequate, but not going to set the world alight. The B2B, meanwhile, is pretty lackluster in its maximum charge rate, especially since it gets limited by the fact that you can only push so much current into that lead acid battery. Now, you can certainly stay off-grid in the B62, but only probably for a night or two, usually in midsummer, especially since the diesel's glow plug's current draw is not really compatible with a leisure battery when it's at a low charge state. A recent survey by Caravan Insurance found that almost 28% of campervans and motorhomes have already switched to lithium batteries. The Endeavour range can be converted to lithium, but to get the most out of it, several components such as the B2B, mains charger and solar do actually then need upgrading. Manufacturers really do need to get with the times and make their vans more lithium compatible from the outset. So anyway, with the rant over, let's continue with how the Endeavour's 12-volt system works. It's controlled by the Seattle panel above the door. This has press buttons for the master 12-volt switch, master lighting switch, pump switch and awning light. And using the menu controls, you can then view battery voltages and tank levels, as well as switching the 12-volt source from the habitation battery to the starter battery and changing various other system settings. Space and water heating is taken care of by the more than capable Truma diesel combi D4E boiler. This takes diesel straight from the vehicle tank, which saves a lot of space as the gas locker then only needs that single cylinder for cooking. It also makes running out of fuel for heating to be highly unlikely. One downside of the Truma when running in diesel mode is that you can sometimes hear a low-level thumping sound from the pump. Now, I'm personally very sensitive to certain types of noise like that, so occasionally I do find that a little bit annoying. But in general, it's not really been a big problem and most people will likely not notice it at all. Using the touchscreen control panel, you can set space or water heating to be powered by either diesel or mains electric when you're on hookup, and again when on hookup, a combination of the two. Fortunately, there is also a Bluetooth app which replicates all of the features and settings. The space heating is thermostatically controlled and uses blown air, of which the fan speed can be set to fast or comfort. There are also timer options and a Bluetooth app which is surprisingly useful for adjusting or turning on the heating from your comfort of your bed rather than a cold walk to the control panel. The water system is pressure based with the floor mounted pump automatically activated whenever a tap is open. In addition to the 100 litre underslung freshwater tank, the boiler also has a 10 litre capacity. This is filled directly from that main water tank, and the drain valve for the system is on the floor next to the boiler. Now, there's plenty of lighting in the B62. Starting at the front, there are the standard vehicle cab lights which run from the starter battery. All other lights are powered from the habitation battery. There are two reading lights just behind the cab seats. These can be dimmed by touching and holding the button for a few seconds. At the sliding door, in addition to the external awning light, there are overhead lights and a cabinet light strip which helps light the footwell. The bathroom light switch is located above the wardrobe cupboard and has two switches, one to operate the light above the door track which lights either the bathroom or the gangway depending on the door position. This is handy at night to provide more subtle lighting when you go to the bathroom. The second switch turns the main bathroom lights on. There's overhead lighting for the cooking area and then the rear overhead lighting for the lounger area, plus two spotlights over the top of each bed and some small spotlights under the end overhead locker. There's also a high level light above the rear doors when the doors are open. The switch for this is inside one of the door pockets and only works when the vehicle ignition key is in and turned at least to the first position. Here's a quick run through of the different lights and their effects at night. To power or charge other devices, the B62 has a fairly modest number of power outlets. In the cabinet area there are the aforementioned two 12-volt sockets plus USB-A and USB-C sockets, all of which only work when the ignition is on. Moving further back, each of those two spotlights has a USB-A socket. Then there is a 240-volt socket near the door and another two more 240-volt sockets on the kitchen wall, ideal for a kettle, etc. On the opposite side there is both a 240-volt and a 12-volt socket along with a TV aerial socket just above the provided TV mounting bracket, where you can mount up to a 24-inch TV. Further back there are two more USB-A sockets, one in each of those LED spotlights, and that's all of the power outlets. So before I wrap up, let's cover off a few issues, and for this I'm going to mention some personal experiences, but mainly, since we've not had the van for that long, reference issues that others have discussed online. From a personal perspective, we've only really had one significant issue, which was due to a wiring mix-up on the battery charge circuit, which led to the battery draining too quickly when off-grid. The cause was identified and fixed promptly by our dealer and hasn't been an issue since. From what I've seen of the build quality, it's actually typical of most camper vans and motorhomes, and caravans for that matter. That is to say, it's okay but not perfect. This is partly a symptom of mass production, but it's also an inevitable consequence of trying to keep the van as light as possible weight-wise, and also on a tight budget. Generally speaking, there are certainly less rattles and squeaks in our B62 than our previous van. But let's face it, you're always going to have some. Looking at other comments online, some people have found that they feel there is limited insulation behind the panels and have proceeded to then add their own. Bailey do apparently test their designs down to -15 degrees whilst maintaining internal temperature with the boiler running. Now, I'm certain that more insulation could be added, but this is actually a common criticism of most, if not all, panel-built vans from major manufacturers. So I doubt that the Endeavours are that much different from the competition. The high-level front screen is, by its position, prone to breakage from stone chips or bird strikes. Investing in some screen protector film may help mitigate this risk, but this issue is again common in other similar designs from other manufacturers. So in conclusion, the B62 is nicely put together camper van built on a solid and refined Ford-based vehicle. Personally, I found the driving experience to be far better than in our previous Ducato-based van, even allowing for the 5-year age difference. It could be improved upon, not least in that adjusting the layout to make one bed a few inches longer and the other a few inches shorter, which would improve both driving and sleeping options for taller owners, especially if one's tall and one's less than tall. The rear lounge layout allows for a far less cramped living experience, especially with the clever design of the bathroom door. It does come at the expense of less of what I'd call bulk storage, so this design may be limiting for people that want to take lots of larger items such as bikes and other outdoor equipment. I'm personally in the process of creating a storage unit to take the place of the central seat and increase our storage options. Other people have fitted external rear door racking system like these from Wheel I.Ams to increase the storage space, so there are solutions to this problem. Overall though, we're really happy with our B62 and think that its layout is really going to work well for us. I hope you found this rather long video helpful, or at least interesting, and if you have, then please do hit the like button to support the channel. If you are interested in seeing other videos that I post, then please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos as they're posted. But most of all, thanks for watching.